Hi, my name is Chelsea, and today I'm going to do my presentation over storytelling, but in particularly Moliere and the impact that he had on French theater. Something that we all know is that storytelling is something that is very near and dear to theater's heart. It has been this way for many, many years, and it continues to play a huge role in it. All that storytelling is, and that means, is that it's the interactive use of words and actions to reveal the elements and images of a story while encouraging the listener's imagination. As Michael Wilson's book, Storytelling in Theater, Contemporary Professional Storytellers and Their Art, explains, there is a national storytelling network here in America, and if you travel overseas in England and places in Europe, there are over 58 storytelling clubs, and storytelling festivals are frequently becoming an up-and-coming, really popular thing. With that being said, I'm going to talk about Moliere and his impact on French theater. It is a fair comparison to make to say that Shakespeare to English theater is about the equivalent to Moliere to French literature. Both were actors as well as playwrights, and both had great insight into human life. His real name was Jean-Baptiste Poquelin, but Moliere was his stage name, and he was a master of satire, need to say more. Moliere was a huge deal for French theater. Like many ordinary people, Moliere did not have it easy and perfect from the get-go when it came to his career. By reading parts of Stephen Dock's review on Moliere's life, I was able to grasp a little bit of background on this playwright and author. It includes information that his father was a well-to-do conformist, and his mom passed away when he was only 10, and his stepmom when he was 14. He attended College de Clermont, which was a Jesuit institution, where he received a huge, great, solid classical background. The plan for him was to follow his father's post at the court, but theater was what Moliere lived for. Ever since he was a small boy, he had been attracted to the theater, and he had a tradition of going with his grandfather to watch different plays and productions at the Hotel des Bourgogne, which we know from our textbook was the only permanent theater up until 1629. As the textbook also mentions, after his incredible education, he joined with 9 other young adults to form the Theatre Illustre in 1643, but it failed in Paris. From this point, the troupe went off on tour of the provinces 3 years later, and it lasted until 1658. Moliere was the man in charge and headed the troupe. The company finally was successful when they put out The Affected Ladies in 1659. This was a satire on contemporary affections. After this, the company's fortunes were assured. It took a little while, but after a little bit of struggling, success was attained. They were granted an annual subsidy and given the title The King's Troupe. As the textbook mentions, many of Moliere's works are farces in the manner of the Commedia dell'arte, by which he was greatly impacted and influenced. Out of all the different achievements Moliere put together, including his comedy ballets and works made especially for court festivals, his comedies of character and manners were the greatest. It was because of his observations on contemporary manners and characters that he also stirred up a lot of controversy for himself. The one that received the most heat, and particularly is one of his most well-known, happens to be Tartuffe. The play's title character is exposed to being a religious hypocrite. I decided that I wanted to do more research on this and figure out a little bit more about Tartuffe. So I read Robert Cardullo's article, which focused entirely on Moliere's Tartuffe. By reading this, I was able to understand that it took place in a middle-class home in Paris. The time was the 1660s when Louis XIV sat on the throne. At this time, the Catholic Church was a huge political power in France. The controversy that stirred up was the main character was a criminal pretending to be a religious man, and that didn't go over well with people as well as the church. The result of this caused the play to be banned. Like author Cardullo says in his article, it was a time of an atmosphere of spiritual correctness, and there was little room for independent or any type of versatile thinking. Although this kind of put a fork in his road, he did not give up, and he eventually rewrote his plays in 1667 and again in 1669. Moliere was a likable man by some, and although some disliked him and thought he was a little controversial, Henry Merivale-Cholape mentioned in his novel about the life of Moliere that he wrote, his mind was always clear, and his views of life were remarkably broad and sound, and he was so human in his thoughts. He ended up creating several plays, but I decided just to pick a couple that I would talk a little bit more on. First being said, The Misanthropy, which he wrote in 1666, became one of his most sophisticated plays, as I would say, but it wasn't necessarily one of his most popular productions. The production was said to be a disturbing drama, and not nearly as full of comedy as some of his other ones. This play is said to be a masterpiece, though, and he definitely made his mark with this. The next one is The Miser, which he produced 2 years after The Misanthropy, and it is said to be a 5-act staged play usually classified as a comedy of manners. Throughout this play, Molière brilliantly blends satire and farce with a fast-moving plot that endures a lot of different shocks and surprises, which the audience really enjoyed. Many people do say this is one of his best and better works. Next is the Les Bourgeois, or the Bourgeois Gentleman, which is a 5-act comedy ballet, which means that it was a play including music, dance, and singing. It was intermixed, like I said, with all of those things, and first presented before the court of Louis XIV by his troupe of actors. The title of the production is an oxymoron because in Molière's France, a gentleman was by definition nobly born, and thus there cannot be such thing as a bourgeois gentleman. The next one was Don Juan, which was a 5-act play he produced, and it was all about the legend Don Juan. After only one performance, it received major attacks by Molière's critics, who considered he was offending religion and the king by eulogizing a libertine. The play was a very, very costly failure. He was ordered to delete a number of certain scenes throughout it, and according to his censors, made a mockery of their faith. The last one that I'm going to focus on, and one that I found very interesting, was the Imaginary Invalid, which is also known as the hypochondriac. So as you can imagine, it's about a hypochondriac who schemes a plan to get his daughter to unwillingly marry a medical student. That way he can get free doctoring, but he ends up himself being admitted to the profession amongst ridiculous and all Latin-sounding gibberish. I found this interesting because I was reading Henry Chaloppe's article about this. During the same time, Molière was suffering from a lung ailment. There's a great and kind of interesting story that during this time when he had his lung ailment and the performance was going on, they urged him to cancel the performance, and his answer or response back to them was that there were 50 poor workers who were depending their daily wage to live on off this, and what will become of them if the performance does not take place. Sadly and unexpectedly, during the play, he had a hemorrhage, and later that night he passed away. And that was the end. But I thought that was very interesting and definitely shows where his passion lied with the theater. He, needless to say, was a true and inspiring theater master, a master of satire, and someone that made an entirely huge impact on theater back then, and is still someone who theater people today can truly appreciate and gain a lot from. And with that being said, that wraps up my project and storytelling in Molière. Thanks for watching.